I'd like to thank you all for letting me come before you and speak. I'd especially like to thank the eldership for trusting me to bring a message from the Word this evening. And I'd like to give a special thanks to Robbie Shepard, who called and checked on me to make sure I took his spot in the rotation, and he called to check on me to make sure that I was prepared. And for that, I am very grateful. A little background about me, something you may not all know about myself, is that I currently do not work, but rather I draw a disability. A few years ago, I had a severe mental breakdown that I am still in the process of recovering from. And that is another reason why I'm exceedingly thankful that I am of sound enough mind to be before you tonight. I bring this up, however, not to go into detail about that. If you want to know more, you can see me after service. I'd be happy to fill you in. I like talking about it. I think it's important that mental health issues are addressed. But I bring that up because of prior to that, I worked several odd jobs throughout the southwest part of the state. And I had quite a few difficulties in work. My identity would become wrapped up in whatever job I was doing at the time. And unfortunately, this meant that when I was criticized, I took it quite personally. I know that some of you, many of you, in fact, have secular jobs and may face some of those similar issues, problems with those that are above you, problems with those that are below you, problems working on a team, just simply maybe difficulty in finding the motivation to make it to work today. When it comes to these issues that we face, especially when it comes to criticism of our work, whether it be in employment or in the home, in a relationship, among family, I think it's important that we turn to the Word. And tonight, I'd like for us to turn to 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 18 through 23. And then we're going to focus in specifically on verse 20. Again, that's 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 18 through 23. Beginning in verse 18, "Servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, not only to the good and gentle, but also to the froward. For this is thankworthy, if a man for conscience toward God endure grief, suffering wrongfully. For what glory is it, if when ye be buffeted for your faults, ye shall take it patiently? But if, when ye do well and suffer for it, ye take it patiently, this is acceptable with God. For even hereunto were ye called, because Christ also suffered for us, leaving us an example, that ye should follow his steps, who did no sin, neither was guile found in his mouth, who, when he was reviled not again. When he suffered, he threatened not, but committed himself to him that judgeth righteously." Verse 20 is one that has resonated with me in my life after becoming a Christian quite strongly. Because I look back at times in the past when, whether it was in secular work or whether it was in a relationship or a friendship or some other aspect of my life, that I did what I felt to be my absolute very best and was criticized, sometimes heavily or harshly for it. I would find myself wondering why such a thing would happen. Now, especially at a time when I was not a child of God, the Bible was probably the last place that I would have thought to look for an answer to such a question. But now I know especially, and I want to focus in again on verse 20 here of chapter 2 in 1 Peter. For what glory is it when ye be buffeted for your faults? So he's saying, what honor is there if you find yourself criticized when you've done wrong? And you do well by taking it patiently. But if you do well and suffer for it, you take it patiently. This is acceptable with God. And I think on this quite often, especially as I look to the future, with a hope of at some point returning to work. I want to carry that attitude with me as I go forward, not just in thought of work, but also that of my relationship with those in Christ, with those in the home, and with those that I consider friends. I want to make sure that I know that at times I will do what I feel is my very best, and someone, for whatever reason, will not accept it. It will not be to them my best. It will not be pleasing. And I know now that I must take such situations when they arise with patience, because that's pleasing to God. Now, perhaps this evening, some of you are facing difficulties, particularly in work, at the home, with friends, in a relationship. And you're wondering what you could do. My recommendation, of course, would be to turn to Christ. In Matthew 11:28 through 30, Jesus says, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light." And we also know and find in 1 John 5, chapter 5, verse 3, "For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous." So if you find yourself being buffeted when you're doing your very best, and you're not sure what to do, whether you be outside of the house of God, whether you be a child of God needing to return, or just simply a fellow Christian in need of the prayers of the congregation, whatever you're facing at this time, we ask that you come forward as we stand and sing the invitation song.